This is Cashology by FMBO, a podcast devoted to the art and science of managing your money. It's like school, but your only homework is living your best financial life. Class is now in session. 70% of Americans own a pet, according to the most recent survey from the American Pet Products Association. And not surprisingly, close to 1 in 5 households acquired a dog or a cat since the beginning of the pandemic. We think of our pets as family members, but they may be the only members of the family without health insurance. And that's what we're talking about today, protecting yourself from unexpected veterinary costs associated with owning a pet. Welcome, and thanks for listening to the Cashology podcast, hosted by me, your guide on the path to financial savvy, Juli Wians. Before we dive into the topic, let's toss it over to some disclosures.
You're darn tootin', sister! Investment products are not FDIC insured, not a deposit or other obligation of the bank, not insured by any federal government agency, not guaranteed by the bank, may lose value. This podcast should not be copied or reproduced without permission. Information and statements within this podcast are subject to change without notice. The Cashology podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to constitute investment advice or recommendations. First National Bank of Omaha does not make any representation or warranty as to the accuracy or completeness of any information or statements within this podcast. When making decisions about your financial situation, consult a financial professional for advice. Podcasts are not regularly updated and information may become outdated. Deposit products are offered by First National Bank of Omaha, member FDIC, equal housing lender. The Cashology podcast, copyright First National Bank of Omaha. Now let's get going! Yeehaw!
Today, I am elated to introduce our guest who's going to teach us about pet insurance, Jason Tellus. Jason is a manager of client services at FMBO and has been with us for over 24 years. Welcome, Jason.
Good morning.
So we were chatting before, and you have 2 golden doodles. Is that right?
I do. I have 2 golden doodles. I've got Goldie and Lucy.
What are their personalities like?
They are all over the place. So I always say it's kind of like having 2 kids in furry suits there. They're always entertaining and keep us on our toes for sure. So my wife and I we're empty nesters now. The kids have moved out, but we've still got the dogs at home to keep us on our toes.
I myself have Wilbur, and he's a golden retriever. So we love our goldens, I guess, Jason, huh?
Yes.
And he is the same way. He is his own person, and honestly, he has his own pet insurance because he will probably in the future get into hijinks. So I'm anticipating it. Let's dive in a little and let our listeners learn more about pet insurance because it is a bit of a taboo topic that not everyone talks about. And honestly, from my own experience, it's a little confusing on what's covered, what's not, what the cost is. How necessary is pet insurance?
I would say with the cost of some veterinary bills, it's highly necessary to be a responsible pet parent. Some examples like treating a torn ACL in a dog could actually cost $3,000 or more. Surgery to remove a tumor, $6,000 or more. Just like humans, pets can get injured or sick.
Just thinking about our dogs, I mean, I know that they love to run. We call it, I don't know if this phenomenon happens with your dogs, but we call it frapping, where they frap around the yard because they love, all of a sudden they're really excited and they just want to run around. And tearing that ACL, I could totally see that happening very easily. So having that insurance to cover the $3,000 it would cost to fix and have a surgery, that's critical. I mean, in past episodes, we've talked about an emergency fund, and that's about 2 months at least of your salary. That could be a significant punch to that savings.
Absolutely. Savings, or, I've spent most of my career in credit cards. And, unfortunately, we've had some customers that have had to put some very healthy charges on their credit cards in the past or had to ask for additional credit. So they could be able to make that life decision to be able to get that necessary surgery for their dogs. So it can be taxing if you're not financially prepared.
Jason, that's an excellent point. Yes, we definitely want to avoid putting these large costs on a credit card where the APR could be very high. Instead, let's prepare with this pet insurance that we're, chatting through today. So tell me, how does pet insurance work? Give us the gist of it.
It works a lot like health insurance policies. You pay a monthly premium based on how much coverage you want. The deductibles can be flexible anywhere from 100, 250, or 500. You got your choice of copays, anywhere from 10 to 30%. And if your pets become sick or injured, you just pay the deductible first, and then the coverage kicks in.
So that's great. That means that just like regular health insurance, you are going to pay a small portion of whatever the cost was to help your pet, but ultimately you're not responsible for the potentially thousands of dollars. One thing though I learned from my experience in signing up with pet insurance, I read through all the fine print, and it is unfortunate because there are quite a few procedures that are pretty common with having, especially a dog, that are not covered as part of pet insurance. So I want to jump ahead to that, Jason. I want to learn more from you and chat through what kind of coverage is expected from pet insurance.
Some of the things that the policies cover covers surgeries, x-rays, emergency care, radiation therapy. Even if your dog has to get hospitalized, it covers that. Some, but not all, will actually cover routine care, such as annual visits and vaccinations, because even those prices can add up as well.
Completely. And that was one thing with my insurance. It did not cover spay or neutering. It did not cover vaccinations. So all those upfront costs with getting a new dog, a puppy, or a kitten weren't covered, which I think I expected for my pet insurance, but I wanted listeners to be aware to make sure you read what's covered. It's mainly for emergency situations that pet insurance will come into play, not necessarily the general upkeep and health of your dog or cat or other animals, which I guess is a question I have for you, Jason. Pet insurance, what kind of pets?
2 or 4 legs, they can be covered, whether it's, birds, reptiles, cats, and then, of course, our best friends, the dogs.
Our best friends. They really are our best friends. I sometimes I think it's funny to say that, and I wish they could talk. I wish they could tell me how much they love me and how thankful they are, but they do it with I guess nonverbal communication, right?
They do.
Let's talk about when you get a new pet, at what point, or maybe some of our listeners have an older dog. I mean, at what stage in a pet's life cycle should we consider pet insurance?
A couple conditions usually that you run into. Your puppy or kid needs to be at least 6 to 10 weeks old. The dog or cat cannot be older than 8 to 14 years old. And other than that, you should be able to sign them up.
We dived into this a little before, with at least my experience with health pet insurance, but they didn't cover the upfront costs of the spay and neutering, the vaccinations. There's also some caveats with pre-existing conditions with your animal. So make sure you also acknowledge that and know that potentially if there's a history of dental disease or hip dysplasia that either occurs with that breeder or was already part of the dog when you adopted or got him from the breeder, then those could be potentially not covered by pet insurance, right, Jason?
That's right.
All right, Jason, I think we're wrapping up and talking about pet insurance.
Okay.
I want to hear a fun story about them. What hijinks have they gotten into? Tell our listeners.
We always say it's kind of like having the Discovery Channel in our living room. Sometimes they'll sleep forever, and then all of a sudden they just start tearing around. So they're actually sisters from the same litter. Several years back, my parents were retired. They were thinking about not having a dog, and then my mom started to kind of get an itch to get back in the dog world again. They actually lived 5 hours south of us, so I actually went. I brought my wife and my daughter with me, and lo and behold, we each ended up with a puppy.
Oh.
So then a couple years ago, my dad actually passed away from COVID, and we put my mom in a memory care facility. So now we've actually brought the sisters back together. So we actually have Goldie and Lucy together now.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm so glad that they could bring comfort and they're together again. That's great.
Yeah, they keep each other a lot of company.
Our family has a golden retriever as well. His name's Wilson. So I have Wilbur. They have Wilson. It's Wilson and Wilbur Wians. We love alliteration here. And I occasionally take them to what we call a forest preserve in the Chicagoland area, and they love it there because they get to see deer, and I practice recall with them, which I'm sure for anyone who has a dog, they know what this is, but basically saying their name, and if they come back, which it's only if they have nothing else on their mind do they actually come back. I wish they were better at it. But one day We were in an open field, and I went to go grab my phone to send a photo of them to my family, and all of a sudden look up and they were gone. And I yell for them to recall them back to me, and here they come out of the bushes, Jason, full of mud.
Oh,
I mean, head to toe full of mud. No idea where they went, what they did. It was terrifying. I felt like a parent in a grocery store with their kid around the aisle. I was like, where were they? But they had the best time of their lives. That is for sure.
that is great.
Well, Jason, I really appreciate you joining us today and telling us more about pet insurance.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
And for anyone who's listening and curious more about financial topics, feel free to check out other episodes we've recorded as part of Cashology. And we look forward to providing you more episodes coming soon.